Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Welcome to Pondering Thoughts with Nida. Today's episode, I'm actually filming with a very heavy heart. Just recently, our community witnessed a suicide murder where two brothers committed suicide and took their family as well. One of the brothers left a suicide note behind. It was a Google Doc. Up till yesterday, it was working. Today, it wasn't working. But what I had done was I printed out a copy so I can read it. This letter reveals secrets that we knowingly ignore. And this episode of Pondering Thoughts with Nida Javed is mainly an analysis of the suicide letter. The secret it holds, and as a society we ignore. And because we're talking about depression, which is a clinical illness, I know my psychologist and psychiatrist friends are, oh my goodness, she's a life coach. Why is she talking about a clinical issue? She's not qualified for it. To you, I say, I am very well aware that I'm not qualified to speak about it clinically, but as a human being, as someone who is identifying a problem, as a life coach who is dealing with people who knows the triggers that lead to depression, I have every right to speak about this. And I want all of you who are watching this to think about this with me. Enough is enough. We are living in a world that's pretending, but now it's time to get real. How many little kids, how many family members, how many humans do we have to lose to suicide? It takes a lot of courage to kill oneself, for heaven's sake. What drives someone to gain that much courage? What drives someone to give up on themselves? Or are they really giving up on themselves? Or are they giving up on the society? Who are they really giving up on? To start, I will reveal how I'm approaching this. We have a really major problem on our hands. And when I was a kid and I was going to school, one of the things, especially my math teachers and reading teachers used to tell me as a problem-solving technique was, when you have a problem, read that problem over and over again. My teacher said, half the solution to your problem is in the problem itself. So take the problem, break it down, get rid of the excess information that you do not need. It is just noise. Reveal the parts of the problem that you can use to resolve it. And that's how you approach a resolution, a solution. And that is exactly what I do in life coaching when I am helping my clients. And that is exactly what we're going to do with this letter. This individual reveals that in 2016 is when he realized he has depression, or he has had depression since then. He said it was not that, oh my God, I failed my test sort of depression that he was witnessing around them. It was a real kind that let me cut myself so I can feel better type of depression. To harm oneself in order to get over another pain, you intensify a different pain as a sign of relief. That means this heart right here is hurting a lot. This is unbearable pain. When your emotions are colliding, and this is a revelation this person makes. He said after a couple more lines, and he's talking about his cutting, the relief started to kick in. I want you to notice how self-harm was tagged as relief. That's the key word. Think about that. It didn't take long to become addicted to the feeling. When I'm talking to youngsters who are addicted to drugs, they say they love it how they don't have to think about anything. And here, this child is saying self-harm was addicting because it turned into a relief. He said, I had to move into knives because he was trying scissors and it was child safety on it, right? It was pretty easy. Just taking one from the kitchen. They were dull, but worked better than scissors. Keywords, pretty easy, kitchen. I want you to notice the accessibility of self-harming instruments in our environment around us on everyday basis that we don't even think about. What made matter worse, my 3 best friends dropped me. They tried to help me before, but they eventually realized that dealing with a depressed person is a lot of work. I was angry at first, but what were they supposed to do? Some might think that he had bad friends. No, people are not bad. They have priorities and they know what they can handle and don't. A person who is going through depression, yes, they are, first of all, don't want you to know that they're suffering. Second, when they do reveal, they want a listener. They don't want to hold the pain inside. They just want you to listen. They just want to talk. What ends up happening is those that are listening turn or attempt to turn into problem solver. Comments come across like, oh my gosh, that's not the worst that could happen to you. Look, this person is suffering more. Oh, get over it. It happens to everyone else. The dismissive comments that come when someone is revealing to you your pain and that's how you respond to them, that's not what they're looking for. If you know that you have a friend who is going through depression, then first and foremost, instead of trying to fix their problem, let them speak. Be a listener. One of the things we do not have enough of in this time is listeners. I'm speaking right now, but my job as a life coach consists of listening. Because I have to pay attention to everything you tell me, you share with me. And listening is not that hard of a skill to develop. I have clients who come to me and talk to me and then say, as soon as I start talking, my friend, my family, or even in some cases, yes, professionals, start plugging in their own story, telling me how relatable they are to me. And I wonder, how? You never let me finish. He says I have never benefited from telling someone how depressed I was. It always ends up with them leaving me. The only people who really stick around are those who are obligated to. Families, professionals. That's what I'm assuming are the obligated presence in a person who is suffering through such sadness. Just pretend you care and never directly offer. And it will waste both of our time. I'll tell you, this reveals that the person who's going through sadness can identify who is really able to help and who doesn't. They realize that being someone who is suffering from a clinical issue right now, they can be difficult. It is hard because the person who is from an everyday life, a friend or a family member, and not necessarily a professional, would have a hard time understanding. They're saying, yes, everyone shares, everyone is like, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. But are you listening? And don't ever say, get over it. Don't ever say it happens to everybody. Don't ever say, oh, these are your problems, listen to mine. Don't. People who just show up to know your story, they take it and they never turn back to actually offer the help that you have asked for. So stop being a pretender, especially to those who can identify. And jot that thought down as a problem of our society, number 1. Then he talks about his breaking point. And then he finally got the therapy help that he needed. And he reveals that it helped. He says it was the second semester of junior year. And it was a huge change. He said, I lost most of my fat and stopped being cringy, awkward kid I used to be. Good, right? It sounds like something was benefiting him through therapy and he was changing. But here's my note that I want you to think about. These were physical changes, not mental changes. He worked on physical, visible changes. Senior year, the best year of my life, he says. Somehow I managed to get a girlfriend who was far out of my league. Think about this sentence. He talks about his girlfriend as something good that happened, and then he says, far out of my league, which means his insecurity was present. Think about that. He became a programming god, he says. He identifies his skill he became good at. He said, and made a solid new friend group. He was socially fitting in. So he had something good despite his insecurities. He identified his skills and he was socially fitting in. What are all this? Environmental changes, not mental changes. So far he's talking about how he benefited that year by physical changes and environmental changes. Okay? He never said mental changes. Then he makes a revelation that I never really cared about school, but he got into UT Austin, felt good having something others cared about. Think about this. He said it didn't matter to him where he went, but it felt good to meet someone else's expectation. Expectations, visible changes, environmental changes, and meeting someone else's expectations. Any of which that addresses what he was thinking and feeling? No. What he says is he was changing all of it, what was physically present, environmentally present, and getting into schools that were meeting societal expectations. Everything around him, not him. Think about that. Unfortunately, the answer is yes. My life was perfect, and that was the issue. My life was perfect, but that didn't change the fact I was depressed. Fitting into your environment, fitting into your expectations, and fitting into your clothes. None of that changes who the person is on the inside and what they are feeling on the inside. To the outside world, they decide what they want to show. The world starts thinking, oh my goodness, this person is so lucky. They have it all. They're developing, achieving such successful person. Look at the difference this is forming, and so on and so forth. In reality, my dear friends, there is no such thing as perfection. And the minute you start realizing your life is perfect, or you are witnessing someone perfect, please step back and think. Where did the idea of perfection come in your mind from? What is perfect? Who is revealing to you what perfection is? To him, he says, my life was perfect. How does he know what perfection was? Think about that. He doubled his medication at times that temporarily helped him. He said every solution was temporary. Hopelessness, he talks about. Hopelessness. That nothing was a permanent solution that he witnessed in his life. And he doubled on his medication to heal, because that reveals he did not want to feel sad anymore. He did not want to feel this way. Hopelessness. And second, doubling medication, overdosing. He didn't do this, but there are many who have easy access to items in our environment that can harm. Easy access for self-harm, people. Think about that. I still have pages to go, but I want you to stick around with me and listen. For the life of me, I just can't comprehend how you people do it. You people are okay with spending hours upon hours listening to lectures, doing homework, studying for at least 4 hours to get a job and make some money. He's identifying the environment he has witnessed. It's a 19-year-old child writing this letter, or a young adult. Okay? The suicide note. He's identifying problems and trying to make a connection between what he's not understanding about the time frame of kids who are around him. He points out societal implemented routine for obtaining a successful life. Go to school, attend lectures, do homework, study, go to college, get a job, make money, build life. And he couldn't understand why. At that young age, why are we stressing so much and forming this routine of getting up and doing everything over and over again? This connection between his belief and meeting an expectation of having a routine that sets up for a brighter future. And who's telling you what the bright future looks like after you do all this that this routine requires? Adults, your society, your environment. That's how we are structured. But he couldn't make a connection between what he was feeling and what he was expected to do. And he questioned those that are doing it. Then he leaves with three questions. He says, how are you satisfied with that? Don't you ever get bored or upset with menial stuff, he says. Doesn't it feel like you're wasting your time? Think about these questions, guys. Think about these questions. These are also questions that I get to hear from my clients. Routine is boring. Why do I have to follow directions so much? Why can't I do what I like? I want you all who are listening to my video right now to think about the 3 questions he is leaving behind. It's not fair. I did everything right. Every little beep thing right. So, I want you to think about that, okay? He says, I can't even think about what I'm going to do tomorrow without enduring an existential crisis. This young adult revealed that he had no idea how to live in a present, and this society is expecting him to live in a routine that is going to set him for the future, and he did that. He reveals that I did everything right. Who's right? What is right? Right is what he expected that he needed to do to be happy, to have a bright future. He was pushing through it. He was enduring it. I'll move on to the next page. He makes a second point, mainly directed to anyone who thinks they're depressed. He said, his friend comes to him, I remember senior year when I arrived at a school after a little cutting session. And one of my friends says I'm going to kill myself because they had a physics test that day. The best part is they knew I had depression, the real kind. Here, I want you to think about everyday people not taking depression seriously and using it loosely. He keeps talking about, and he made this revelation quite a few times in his letter, that people are just like, oh my goodness, I'm depressed. They would talk to someone who was actually going through clinical depression. And this term is being loosely fitted. Yes, there is sadness, and then there is depression. And depressed people, believe me, it takes a lot of courage for them to actually reveal what is making them sad, that they are actually feeling this way. Hardly have I ever witnessed someone who was depressed and played victim. People like him are actually suffering in silence. And when they do speak about their truth, they're left cold. Because those who haven't even figured out how to help themselves, how will they ever help someone who is this severely in need of assistance? That alone should tell you that we have so many people walking among us who are disconnected with their own being. The reason we don't know how to help someone is because we haven't even learned how to help ourselves yet. This is why I preach. This is why I say self-discovery is so important. The problem is that while many people feel sadness, it is not depression. Depression, now he reveals his definition of it, is when you feel the same sadness to the point where it interrupts your sleep or prevents you from doing your hobbies for over 2 weeks. It is a real illness. And if calling someone retarded as a joke is considered wrong, then treating depression the same way should be too. Depression is intensity of sadness. An unbearable pain where self-harm turns into relief. Think about that. He says, I tried my best to keep it together. And he revealed his truth to one of his friends, sweet mates, who offered to talk to him. And he said that was a mistake he made of accepting to talk to someone. Trust. He says, I told him everything. He knew most of my deals already, but there was one new thought I shared that haunted him. He became vulnerable. He says he'll reveal later, and he does. He says he was kicked out of the dorm. Consequences of being honest. All right, I want you to point that out. And he says, I can't really blame them, but I do wish they would have at least made me part of the decision. So here's in this passage what I want you to notice and think about. He trusted someone who offered to talk to him. He shared what his intentions were. He became vulnerable, and instead of helping him with his intentions, he was kicked out of dorm without even consultation, without even approaching him to help him in a way that he could have benefited. His intentions were taken as a threat. So the school where he was in, the person who he trusted, who offered him to talk intentions and prevent such actions from happening, instead go against and kick them out. Revelation, people, think about it. Think about, where is the problem? Where is the problem? We have so many people talk to me all over the place. Also, like this letter reveals. But then when somebody ends up trusting you and talks to you, you sell them out. You gossip. You backbite. You turn them in. Yes, if it's dangerous, do it. But then to a proper person who can offer help, not go against and kick them out. After getting evicted, he dropped out of college. And of course, then he says, I needed to get a will to live before I could get motivation for a piece of paper. Motivation for willingness to live? Think about that. Society is saying, go to school, get good grades, get that piece of paper on your wall so people know you're an expert in your field. Who cares how you're feeling? Get motivated, lose weight, get motivated, physically change yourself, environmentally change yourself, meet all those expectations that what society thinks is what you need to do to be successful, but ignore the fact that you don't even want to live anymore because all of this is becoming exhausting. Ignore it. Then he talks about his older brother who was going through more tests than he was. And he says if it wasn't for him, he would have been gone a long time ago. Then he talks about the show Office. He talks about Andy. He says nobody backs him up. He was an outsider. He says Andy's character is the one that developed most. They show him getting help. They show him going through anger management. But no one had his back. Then he says all the things this character does and everything that was wrong with it. Why was this character who was actually shown getting help and developing canceled on the show? He was easily replaceable. Was this child trying to relate his life to this character Andy on The Office? Because no one backed him up? He was getting help. He seemed like an outsider. His job was tough. He had anger issues. So he was dismissed. No one wanted to be around him. He was butt of the joke most of the time. We easily mock and joke upon others, racially, socially, about their disabilities, about their struggles. And it is commonly seen on our TV, on our social media, on everything that, and by the way, because it's everywhere, it is socially acceptable. And because it is socially acceptable to make fun of somebody who is doing something different or is someone different, and we use it as comedy, people in real life are doing the same thing. Laughing at those who are internally struggling or judging them who are internally struggling. And then what do? We make them feel like a misfit. Then he says he can continue talking about it, but life is too short. Then he says, I operate with logic. I make pro and con list, and that includes killing my family. He says, let's start with the meaning of life. He says, to everyone else, meaning of life is deep, unsolvable mystery. Society's definition of life. But he has come to a conclusion that it is simply existence of happiness. In fact, every decision you solely make is because it contributes to your overall happiness. He says, I know many of you will disagree with me, but hopefully I can convince you with few examples. No. I agree with him. Most of the decisions we make is because we're expecting a positive result that will ultimately make us feel content and happy, like we have done something. Just like how he felt when he got into UT Austin because he got into a school others cared about. Decisions are made because we want happiness out of them. I agree with him. Then he shares few examples. The students don't attend school for direct happiness, but they view ultimately that's going to lead to a successful life that will lead to happiness. Some people think school is great because of it. Some people think school is a worse decision. And they choose short-term happiness over long-term goals. And then you have religious people who might say you only live to please God. But in fact, worship is yet another decision that makes you content. He's right. All these examples are right. And I'm here thinking someone who understood life so profoundly chose to give up on it. Then he says, I live in so much pain and turmoil that it isn't worth living anymore. Then he continues on saying, I guess I'm just too selfish to care. An attempt to own his life. Selfishness, that I'm tired of living for everyone else and let me do something for myself because I need to own my life. That means connect with yourself and disconnect with the pressures of the world. You cannot make everyone happy. I want to point this out as I read this part of the suicide note where he reveals that now it's time to be selfish and take his life that he's been living for other people. Think about that. He says, there's my family. The one reason I forced myself to live for 19 years. And then he says, none of us would have to feel sad ever again. He knows the overwhelming feeling of sadness. He doesn't want to leave that behind with his family. So he decided to take them with him. He wanted to save them from sadness. To him, it was a favor he was doing his family. Imagine the intensity of his pain. He says he spoke with his brother, how they planned out how they're going to carry out this mission. And he says gun control in US is a joke. Another weakness of our society. He talked about how he was able to move from scissors and get knives to cut himself, double dose of his medication, and guns. So easy to get guns. You can just lie on that questionnaire and you got it. Then he says what to do with his money, right? So he says, I went to GoFundMe. Another weakness he identifies of our society, because GoFundMe was scheduled or had most popular charities first, and then they had the least popular charities. Another weakness of our society he's pointing out is that priority is by popularity. But if you really think about everything that's in our society, everything is prioritized by popularity. It's always the rich first, and then the middle class, and then the poor person. It is always what is more beautiful that will be listed first, and then everyone else. It is always the most votes before picking another one. Popularity over purpose. This young adult was done with it, was tired of it. We are just following everything. We're living through routines. We're doing everything right to ultimately reach our happiness. So to summarize, let me tell you something, okay? The revelations revealed in the suicide note. People who don't listen, hypocrites who pretend to care, living a life others are pleased with, coping with pain by self-harm, physically, environmentally, and meeting expectations after therapy, but not really healing. No permanent solution, sense of hopelessness, failure even after meeting social expectations. Wrong use of labels, depression. Betrayal in trust, mistake of sharing vulnerability. People making decisions without one's consent. Consequences for being honest. Having relatable family members that can understand because they're going through the same thing you are, but not friends. Witnessing contradictions between meaning of life of society and personal choices of people. Easy access to self-harming items, medication, knives, guns. Societal hypocrites. Popularity over purpose. And at the end of it all, not everyone gets the help they need. Because if our help was equally divided, it will reach everyone. In conclusion, I know at the end of it all, he said, I am taking my family with me because I love them so much and I don't want them going through the pain. He said once his dad found out, he tried to help in every which way possible. So I ask you, who is the true enemy? Who is driving all these children, young adults, and people to commit suicide, live a depressed life, give birth to this mental illness? Is it the village that is supposed to help us raise our child? The schooling, the environment, the societal pressures, and it is getting worse and worse because now we have social media to reveal to us why we're not good enough. The trolls, each one of the damaged people that are telling and criticizing each other, bullying each other, picking on each other, and not really listening. All these talkers. I don't apologize for analyzing this letter because this young adult left us with so many revelations about our society, about questioning his age group. Think about that. He is a child who left us with questions and gave us insight into his mind, his thoughts, and where we as a society failed him. And I hope you don't distribute your help according to what is popular. Reach those who need actual help. I have left you with a lot to think about. Thank you so much for being the listener. The ear you have given me right now, give it to your friends, give it to your family. And may Allah help me and you both help those in need. Keep loving, keep living. Have a nice day and rest of your life.